D11. We had some technical issues towards the end, but yeah, we spent some time on access lists. We're going to manage access lists. I'm going to change colors here through the routers and routing devices. What we're using here first are extended access lists, and the numbering somewhere there's some limit here. I'd have to look it up. Next week we'll show you a couple named access lists after we do a few. And again, we have this access list entry, and let me switch back here. So we talked about you have an access list, you got a number, permit or deny, some protocol, source, where the source IP address, destination IP address, and then some port number. As we work through these, okay, as we work through these, we will start to see how that all fits together. I also talked about, access lists. We take traffic and compare it to a list, and then we either permit the traffic, deny it, or inspect it. The inspect part, let me use another color here. The inspect part works if you go out through a firewall and you tell it, when it goes through the firewall, to inspect these particular things, then it will let that traffic back through. So that's, even though the firewall is set up with this barrier here, can't let anything in, but if we have legitimate traffic going out, when that traffic returns, we'll let it back in. And we can look at those next week too. Okay? So, we also talked about VPNs, interesting traffic. We indicate interesting traffic typically with an access control list. One other thing here dealing with this. We talked about logical diagrams where, like this, all of this over here is like a logical diagram, and it doesn't have now, but typically we include the IP addresses. So when you did your work on the access list, part of that work was to diagram it. Okay, so yeah, we'll look to where we get better at doing that. We reviewed directory services for Linux. Talked about protocols. The students looked up Kerbos and Wikipedia. Talked about tickets and so forth. And we reviewed those terms. We should know those terms. And we talked about Samba. I'm not sure we got my answered question. I think it always works with Active Directory. We talked about free IPA, and we talked a little bit about PHP LDAP administration. PHP, we're going to be working with PHP when we do our database work. Brigham Young, Dave something designed this anyway. So we use that during the CIS. I mentioned full stack. The students don't, at least they weren't willing to share web app. That's because of the PHP. To move fast through the next slides. We reviewed directory services, network security, cloud, IDS, IPS. There was I mentioned the currency of this. I have an email that was talking about a webinar talking about security operations centers. Destroying hard drives, talked a little bit about that. We'll talk more specific about things like that in forensics. RFID, we did a little like a quiz, okay? RFID, which type was which. It was good. Gage talked about how they use it at FedEx, scanning information, And a type 1 error, false rejection. We're going to reject somebody, but we shouldn't have. Okay, so they're legitimate authentication. A false acceptance means, yeah, we're going to let it through, but we shouldn't have. Okay, we're accepting somebody. So this is the worst, and this is bad. Okay, and there are type 1, type 2 errors. And we're talking about like using biometrics to identify people. This is going to be really amazing what happens with that in the future. Hardening only makes sense if you have some background. So we did Linux IT Essentials, the first networking class, and you've had a programming class. How much did you learn from those? Okay? So we all got to work at that. You know, instructors work hard to give you the best opportunity to learn, but then also you have to work hard at it. We can use technology to do a lot of this work, but the more we use it, the more we can develop into what people call a black box, where you really don't know what it's doing. And you keep doing that till eventually, I like to use this term, you go down the rabbit hole, where AI and machine learning, keeps adjusting what's in there, and before long you're not really sure why you're getting the solutions you get of a black box. An example was Apple started getting those lines of credit, and two people with the exact same information submitted, a husband and wife. The husband got a higher line of credit than she did. When they asked why, they said, well, that's what the AI, ML, that's what the algorithm said. Side note, Kingland's doing a little bit more with AI and machine learning and Python, but they're, primarily a Java place. And they do a lot of, you talk about full stack information. Did a little bit of a review here. I asked students to go in and check. Only 4 did. Not sure why. RFID, we talked about that in passports. We talked about wallets that's secure, so communications can't come in and out of the wallets. We talked about passports, domains. These were good. The students, everybody did a nice job of identifying issues. We didn't get to spend much time on private and public cloud. This is where we ran into the video issues, and the screen was made small, and said we were bandwidth issues. Okay, I have to look into that, but I will emphasize again, policy, procedures, how do you deal with people? Well, you get to start here, and then you try to develop, in my opinion, a culture where people take it upon themselves to work hard at security. Okay. Removable media. Yeah, there were a lot of things. We talked about devices and so forth. We talked about backdoors. All right. Standards for equipment. Things to consider. Okay, and then the rest of the day we spent on some of those last items. We talked about ethics. We talked about ethics, and then we talked about some legal issues. All right. But we don't have any screenshots of those. Not much beyond what was in the curriculum, though. Except update it. We looked at the current. But most of that was okay. That's it.